Three, two, one. Welcome back to the Ride Balance podcast. This episode is brought to you by Ride Clean. Ride Clean is an ultra premium polish and sealer that works on your car or motorcycle. It's very easy to use. You simply shake, spray, and wipe, and you'll get a polished mirror-like finish once you're done. You can use it on any surface on your vehicle and get outstanding results. Yes, it works on matte. Yes, it's super water repellent, especially if you spray it on your windshield of your vehicle. It also works as a degreaser for your rims and so much more. Check them out at rideclean.co. Use promo code RBPodcast for 15% off, and they're doing free shipping right now. So that's 15% off plus free shipping at rideclean.co, promo code RBPodcast. My guest today is a true badass. You know him as on Instagram as Rob 1WheelRevolution. He pops wheelies everywhere he goes, every bike he gets on. You've probably seen him a few times with one foot on the seat, one foot on the fairing, and just riding, standing up like a true badass, because he is. He's been posting since 2011, 2012 on Instagram. He's been doing so much more. You're really going to enjoy this episode. We dive deep into the performance, the gear he uses, how he got into it, and recommendations if anybody ever wants to do stunts. These are the pro tips on how to get into that. And we talk about a lot of safety gear as well as sponsors. Get ready for an exciting episode with Rob Carpenter, One Wheel Revolution. Here we go. Hey, Rob, finally, I got you on. It's been a...
Yeah, it's been a wild time lately, but it's good to finally get a chance to sit down and chat with you.
Absolutely. What's been going on, man? You're pretty active.
Oh, man, just staying busy. Not a lot of shows and stuff like that, but we've definitely been staying busy with the media, lots of marketing stuff. I mean, we do all of our stuff on social media, but we also... try to do whether it's photos, video projects, and different stuff for various companies in the motorcycle industry. So luckily, we've had a lot of that sort of work to fall back on, and also just a lot of time to really perfect things that we're usually too busy in the midst of motorcycle and show season to get to.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that it's 2020 and we're dealing with this now, right?
Yeah, it is. It's interesting, like you say, when it kind of all started at the beginning of the year. And yeah, I remember kind of sitting all the way back there thinking like, all right, 3-4 months, this is all going to blow over. We'll be back to life as usual. And yeah, like you say, here we are almost, 7-8 months later. And doesn't feel like a whole lot has changed.
It looks like it's gotten worse in some senses.
Yeah, in some places, yeah, we've had several different sort of motorcycle events or rallies or different things, that either got canceled or postponed, and they really were under the impression that hey, give it a few months, we're going to get things back together, and we'll get rolling at a later date, and sadly, a lot of those places, like you say, have progressively actually gotten worse and have now had to just kind of postpone everything till next year.
Just for the sake of the listeners, where are you calling from?
So I'm actually calling from Billings, Montana. So that's where I was born and raised out of, and I travel all over the country, but still come back to Montana and the Billings area and call it home.
That's awesome. I saw on your Instagram you've been posting since 2012, 2013.
Yeah. We kind of, I started doing a lot of media and writing stuff, which probably kind of picked up in 2010 or 2011, and a lot of the original stuff was more focused on just creating, magazine ads and pictures and photos that different companies could use. And then I got kind of pushed by several friends that said, hey, no, you need to get on this Instagram thing, and then you need to be more active on Facebook and stuff like that. So it was kind of like I already had the media capture and creation part kind of already going at that time. So it was real easy to kind of move into the social media platforms and be able to share a lot of the stuff that we do.
Yeah, no, you could tell. You could tell that you've been consistent on it. You could tell even from the very beginning, you know, how skillful and that you had a focal point and you've been consistent throughout the years. I was just going through your Instagram and I was just, you know, every post you have is just mind blowing. And then I kept going and kept going. I got to 2012 or 2013. I'm like, fuck, this guy's been doing this forever.
Yeah, it is. It's you know, there's been a lot of progression of it. You know, in the beginning when the Harley riding and the Harley tricks and stunt riding stuff was so new. And so in the beginning, you know, you could really, you know, I could, you know, for lack of a better word, do a lot of very sort of basic stuff and simple stuff. And I didn't, the media was still good and still whatnot. It was still great media, but it just, it's definitely, as the time has gone on, has pushed me to get more and more creative, go ride in more daring places and stuff like that, and as well as pushing the equipment that we're using to capture it with, whether it be cameras, drones, GoPros, and all that type of stuff. And so now, kind of at the level that it's at, it's you know, going a lot of wild places, a lot of really sketchy riding conditions, because a lot of times that's where you get this really unique medias and places that a lot of people generally wouldn't go and try to do these tricks, and trying to push the camera equipment and also push the people that are helping me to be able to hone their skills in or fine tune what they're doing to make each shot, you know, a little bit better or, you know, a little bit more inspiring, if you will.
Yeah, no, your process, it looks like it takes a lot of time and effort and organization and collaboration of multiple people. I mean, you're like I said, your content is superb. For the sake of the listeners, how would you introduce yourself?
So that generally, I'm Rob Carpenter of 1WheelRevolution. So 1WheelRevolution it's kind of the name I go under, but it also represents anytime we go and do a team show or something like that, it's under the name 1WheelRevolution. But a lot of times, a lot of people just know me as Rob One Wheel or Rob 1WheelRevolution. You know, like I say, as far as my presence, but I'm not too bent on being a superstar. A lot of people say, "Oh, you need to get more shots with your helmet off," and I always kind of chuckle, and I'm like, "Nah, the motorcycle guy with the helmet on, that's the real me."
Absolutely. It's like Batman with the mask, you know, you want to be,
yeah, exactly.
You want to be protected. And then how would you introduce your occupation? Are you a professional stunt man?
Yeah. You know, it is tough. It's you know, a lot of it is definitely the professional stunting and stuff like that. But I can honestly say that the stunt riding is probably only 50% of what's gotten me to kind of where I am in my career. Because a lot of it is about sort of, again, the detailed sort of media curation, understanding camera equipment, how everything works, understanding staging shots, scouting locations. Once again, a lot of the places that we shoot can have certain risks, whether it's, you know, poor riding conditions, whether it's the, you know, legality or the permission based thing of whether or not we should really have permission to shoot there per se. So a lot of it is just being able to deliver quality content that doesn't require a lot of these companies to have to invest in all the stuff that they would to normally get that one single shot. You know, normally they're looking at, okay, now I gotta send a camera crew out. I'm gonna have to pay them for travel and all that stuff, cover their travel, hotels, food, lodging. I've got to send them with camera equipment. I've got to have a permit for the shoot spot. I've got to have insurance to cover the team and the crew. And so there's all that stuff that can get sort of wrapped up into one shot, and we're able to do that and execute it much more easily, much cheaper, and a lot of times, like I say, I'm unfamiliar with how to kind of get in and get shots and get out and not whether it's not bother people or not have somebody concerned. So a lot of it is being able to sort of do that stuff, not bother and disturb anybody, and get out of there, and job well done, and nobody was harmed and nobody was put in danger, and the company, gets that shot that they need for the marketing ad or the online ad or whatever it might be.
That's a great way of putting it. I didn't even think about that, because all I see is the final result. All I see is the nice picture. All I see is the nice wheelie, the burning out. But I haven't even, I mean, it did cross my mind a little bit of what it takes for that, but it looks so flawless and so professional that all you focus on is you on the bike doing those stunts.
Yeah, exactly, and that's definitely a lot of it is just trying to maintain the focus, whether it's the stunt, whether it's the product that we're trying to capture in the photo, and to get really good clear media. But a lot of times, like you say, it's the stuff that people don't see, the scouting ahead of time. Many times I have multiple people on opposite ends of wherever we're shooting with walkie-talkies. They're looking out for cars. They're looking out for anything like that we need to be aware of. And that's also why in a lot of my media, you never see vehicles, you never see people, you never see, for lack of, again, better word, any innocent bystanders in danger. Because we go to great lengths to make sure that what we're capturing, that if anybody's in harm's way, it's me and only me. And that the camera crew and anybody else that could be in the vicinity, we're making appropriate changes to what we're doing to keep everybody safe and keep everybody in good standing.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you go that far into detail. That's awesomeness. How did you get into stunts?
So I actually got into stunt riding. So yeah, I got into stunt riding. I had built a bike. I wanted to get into road racing, and I thought, okay, this is going to be a good ticket for me. And I like speed. I like the adrenaline rush and all of that stuff. Back about 2004, 2005, built a 600 bike and thought I wanted to get into road racing. Kind of got it set up with every part you could imaginably sort of buy and bolt to it, without getting into serious motor work and stuff like that. And I kind of knew that I was going to, start in some sort of amateur leagues and really try to slowly work my way up and get my feet wet. So I went down and, attempted to go and do sort of an amateur race. There was a big race going on at Pikes Peak Raceway. And so I went down there with this bike and was going to kind of do this. They had the little amateur session kind of that was built around the race to kind of get younger people and new people involved and, much slower speeds and all sorts of stuff like that. But just so happened that the night before the race, somebody stole the bike from the hotel parking lot.
Your bike?
So woke up the next day and found out that I didn't have a motorcycle anymore. The bike was going to be a race bike and stuff, so I had it, fully paid off and everything, because I obviously intended to probably have a little learning curve here and there and probably tumble it down the side of the racetrack a couple times. So
right.
I wanted to have a bike that didn't need to be insured and all of that sort of stuff, and wasn't really set up for the road, but it got stolen. So I went home.
Did you have insurance?
What's that?
Did you have insurance?
So I didn't. I built the bike with the intention of racing it and
that's
crashing it very hard many times, and so I kind of wasn't planning on riding it on the street or ever being able to really turn back and turn in an insurance claim.
Right.
Because it was probably going to be my fault on a racetrack for why it was in little bitty pieces.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it got stolen. Yeah, it got stolen, went home, sort of sulked for about 5-6 months. I did buy another motorcycle and didn't even touch it for about 2 or 3 months. Finally, my friends drugged me out of the house, and they're like, dude, you got to ride that bike. You can't just let it sit there any longer, and if you don't ride it, one of us is. And so they kind of got me back out. I always liked the adrenaline rush, but obviously I was a little bit jaded in the mindset of racing and stuff like that after what had happened. So I kind of just had a who cares attitude and was like, nope, I'm gonna ride wheelies on this thing. And so I started riding wheelies on that bike and pushing it more and more and more. And one thing led to another. Pushed my wheelies to the point I could on the street, then started doing it sort of in parking lots and working more on the detailed trick riding. And that kind of just slowly carried into some local opportunities to do little shows and stuff like that. And finally got noticed by another stunt team that needed a fill-in guy, and they were doing a big motorcycle rally in Oklahoma. Went down there, rode for them. Another team that saw me ride with them needed another fill-in guy. And so for kind of about a year, I kind of played this fill-in guy, just filling in shows for these other teams. And eventually kind of felt like I had a passion and kind of knew where I wanted to take it. And that's kind of where the One Wheel Revolution V-twin stuff starts.
And how long were you riding before you got your first bike that got you there?
So I would say, I started riding, about back in, probably right about 2002, was kind of when I started riding. I started riding, sport quads. I had a buddy who had a dirt bike, rode some dirt bikes and different stuff, and kind of just dabbled in a little bit of everything in the beginning. And, kind of after a while, I felt like jumping wasn't my thing. I didn't really want to jump a lot. So I kind of, gravitated more towards the street bike aspect. And then I ended up riding for about, I'd say roughly about 3.5 years or so of just riding, sort of canyon carving, a lot of stuff like that before I really started to, get interested in the wheelies and the stunts and the tricks and start to spend most of my time focusing on that.
That's crazy. How many bikes do you have now?
So right now, I've got one that's sitting up in Canada waiting to come back to the US, but
what's it doing in Canada?
So I took it up there literally the week before the virus stuff shut the border down. And at that time, we kind of didn't, it was going on over in Europe a lot and that sort of stuff. But so there was a company up in Canada, MJK Performance, and they do a lot of really cool trick billet parts, and their big focus is performance baggers. So my bike, I bought a new Street Glide, and I thought, okay, like I'll just take it up here, let it hang out up here for a few months. He can design some parts for it and off of it and whatnot to sell to other consumers as well. And then the COVID stuff sort of flared up and made its way across the Atlantic Ocean and really started to hit the U.S. And at that point, then the border got shut down. And so my poor bike has been up in Canada since February. So it's kind of a bummer when you get this brand new bike that you plan on building and riding all summer, and it's stuck in its own quarantine.
That's it. That's terrible. That's terrible. And then the Street Glide you have now? The one that you do all the stunts on?
Yeah. So then I have I have that older 2004 Street Glide.
That thing looks badass.
That's one that, it is. It's a super, super cool bike. We built it back in 2014. So we kind of built it back really before anybody else. I think there was maybe one or two other guys that had kind of dabbled a little bit with wheeling baggers, but it wasn't really, much of a thing. And the funny thing is we finished that 04 and started riding it, and what people just kind of didn't know what to think of it. They thought, oh, that's cool, but people were even scared to have me bring it to stunt shows and stuff because they were just like, man, that's such a big bike. I don't know if that's a good thing. So
somebody's gonna get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. So, but obviously, here we are now. about 6 years later, and the bagger wheelie scene or stunting baggers and all that type of stuff is really taken off and thriving out there in the fringe community of motorcycle stunts.
Yeah, it's crazy. I saw it once in 2000. I want to say 2008. I was going from LA to Reno, Street Vibrations, and at one of the stops by Tahoe, I saw this guy at that time, which was a big deal. He had a 117 chain drive. I believe it was I want to say it was a Road Glide. And, he popped the wheelie. He did it, at 12 o'clock position and was riding. And I was blown away. I've never seen such a thing. I was like, this is fucking insane. And after that, I never saw it again, until, the very recent, last 5-8 years. Now you start seeing, now it's everywhere. Now I got a bagger that I'm like starting to get prepped up. And I was going to ask for stunting advice, but I already picked your brain a little bit. I think my problem why I never got into it, because I got friends who are like, how come you're not doing wheelies yet? And I just realized, because I'm always buying a nice bike, and I don't want to do anything on a nice bike. I don't want to take the chance. It's too expensive. So I guess the first step would be buy an affordable bike.
Yep. Yeah, an affordable bike and even something too. I mean, I always tell people it's like, you're going to crash unexpectedly here and there, and you're not always going to, especially in the beginning, have control over how you're falling, how the bike's falling, and a lot of those details that really matter as far as a crash you walk away from or a crash that ends up hurting you or severely hurting your bike. And so yeah, an older bike, something smaller. I always encourage people to get the basics down. It doesn't mean that once you get down wheelies, you gotta wheelie a dirt bike forever and ever, or a little pit bike or just whatever it is. But I always encourage people to kind of get a feel for the basics. There's a ton of stuff that transfers over from riding one to the other, and spending time on a manageable bike that won't seriously hurt you and that you can affordably keep running and fix really makes a big difference in the beginning. And it seems like some of the people that jump right to the big bike and they got to have the bagger. They've never really done wheelies on much of anything else, but I want to just go right to the bagger. Those are the people that, get into it for a couple of months. They have a bad crash, either hurt themselves or do so much financial damage to their bike that then they're out of it and they can't keep practicing for another few months. So I always encourage people to get it down on the small bikes. I know if I had jumped right to the big bikes, I probably wouldn't have made it this far, because I would have gone broke a long time ago, trying to keep bikes in one piece
and skipping all the steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And you're okay. So you have a brand new Street Glide. You have what is it, 2020 or 2019?
Yeah. So it's actually it's a 2019. Yeah, 2019 Street Glide. So that one, I finally hired a specialty transportation company. So that one will be coming back to the States here in the next month and a half or so. So I'll finally get to work on that.
Can't wait till it's done.
04 Street. yeah. It's going to be a wild machine, and it should just be so smooth and crisp. The handling is really such a big part of that big bike. So
okay, let's pick your brain on that. So and then we'll continue through the list of your bikes.
Yeah.
But right now, actually, let's finish the list of your bikes. So you have the 2019. You have a 2004 Street Glide. What else?
Yep. So we got a 2004 Street Glide that kind of covers the big touring bikes. Then next in line we've got a 2018 M8 equipped Fat Bob. That bike it's given me some challenges. I crashed it really bad at one point. I blew the motor up in it at one point. So I've done a couple of things to it that have taken it out of commission from regular use, but it's finally back and going well.
That's the M8 motor, right? The 114.
Yep. So that's the M8 motor. Big white and black bike. Beautiful handles, incredible. The M8 motor definitely brings its own challenges as far as setup. But it's been nice to get through a lot of those challenges, because once that new bagger comes back across the border and we have to get to work on it, there's a lot of stuff now that we've already troubleshooted and come up with solutions for, to be able to set it up much quicker and with much less headaches than the Fat Bob. So so those will kind of be the two new motors. Obviously, that '04 just has a twin cam in it. Then we've got a 2016 FX DLS. This has primarily been my cruising.
lot of fans, a lot of fans.
Oh
of the
yeah,
FX DLS.
yeah. It is. I mean, they're such amazing bikes, and if you know of the twin cam style motor and just all that stuff, it's just it's got its downfalls, the rubber mounting and just all that sort of stuff. But for a muscle car, I mean, it's like when I look at the black and gold of it, like it just screams to me, or just flashes images of a black and gold Pontiac Firebird and burning rubber and taking off, so it kind of just has that real muscle car feel in the way that it looks and the way that it handles, and anytime anybody's a fan of it, I can't ever tell them any different, because it is just such a beautiful bike, and once you ride one and feel one, it's hard to just not fall in love with them, even though they do have a few shortcomings. So so that's been mainly my cruiser bike, but it's been commissioned kind of last fall and this year to doing more aggressive riding projects for some media where companies specifically wanted that bike. So it kind of got taken out of just being a cruiser. We've added more performance parts and more stuff. We've tried to keep it tame. We're trying not to set it up as a full-on stunt bike, trying to keep it more like a moderate everyday dyno that somebody would ride, but capable of doing aggressive tricks and stuff like that.
What's the difference between where's the split between casual riding and full stunt bike for an FX DLS?
I mean, that's a good question, and I mean, a lot of people might have different takes on what they consider. Some guys is shocks and a belt is the cutoff. Some people it's shocks and a chain and some stage one performance parts and whatnot. I think for me, it's really some of my really technical stunt bikes. You can walk up to them and there's very noticeable differences. You might see a handbrake, you might see a tank seat, you might see a custom sort of step bar in the back. There might be a scrape plate on the back of it to create sparks when you scrape it, and some stuff like that, as well as some additional crash protection. So kind of when you walk up to some of my real dedicated stunt bikes, you notice things that are very much out of place that you wouldn't see on a normal bike. I think for me, for the Dyna is I do have some sprockets and gearing. I've got a seat that's slightly modified to make stunt riding and riding wheelies easier. But aside from that, you really don't have a lot of that equipment. If I took that Dyna and parked it in a crowd of other Dynas, you wouldn't, and said, hey, which one's the stunt bike real quick, you wouldn't be able to pick that one out of a crowd. It would just blend in and look like every other Dyna that somebody had cruised to the rally at. So kind of like I say, the other bikes, whether it's any of that crash protection, seats, special brakes, stuff like that, there's definitely lots of stuff that the average guy would say, okay, that's something unusual.
Yeah, that's already far enough. But for you, that's why I wanted to see your input on that. What about motor work? What are you gonna do to that FX DLS?
So a lot of people always ask, and they assume, as they have from the get-go, that we do a lot of motor work and that a lot of motor work is necessary. For everything I do, less is more, in terms of the stunt riding. You build up less heat, you've got lower compression, you've got more forgiving sort of fuel parameters, and it could be fuel, it could be timing, it could be all sorts of different stuff. But I find that those motors that are kept in more of a OEM form, for lack of a better word, they've got really sloppy tolerances. And those sloppy tolerances really come into play when we superheat these motors doing these stunts. And that's the biggest downfall of the air-cooled V-twin is just that without airflow, it really struggles to cool itself. So for all of our motors, we want everything to be really loose. We want it to not be tight from the get-go, so that as all the parts swell up from the extreme heat, everything can still move freely and not cause excessive wear. The bikes that we have done specialty motors in, generally we end up regathering it at some point. The heat builds up, the parts swell up. We just have a lot more wear in those motors. So we are experimenting right now with some 124 kits, both in the Fat Bob as well as the new Street Glide. So we'll have some 124 kits in those. We've really tamed them down. We'll have more displacement in terms of CCs, but we're also trying to keep the cam very mild and trying to really minimize the heat that gets trapped in the motor. And those M8s are, they're more prone to trapping that heat in there a little bit than some of the older motors. So.
Yeah, they just released a new engine kit too. I think last month. I think it's 130 or 133. Did you see that from Harley?
It's a 131. 131, and I think it's like a stage 4 is what they're branding it as. And great. I'm sure it's super powerful. I'm sure it makes incredibly great,
horsepower,
numbers
torque,
as far
performance,
as the torque and the horsepower, exactly. But I feel like it's probably one of those motors, once again, that you're not going to want to sit from stoplight to stoplight with no airflow, because that 131 is going to build up a lot of heat much faster.
Yeah, no, and even with the 114, when I ride my Street Glide, it's hot. It's definitely the hottest motor I've had, between my legs. It's too much at times. And LA doesn't even get that hot like Palm Springs or Arizona or Vegas, but it gets boiling hot. I finally got the wind deflectors that push air away, the heat deflectors that push air away from you, and it kind of gets air into that back cylinder. And it helped, but it's still hot.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is you still need a bunch of air moving over the motor, regardless of how hot the ambient air temperature is. And obviously, especially for a lot of the stuff we do, and probably 90% of the situations, there's almost no airflow, whether it's a stunt show or whether we're just shooting media stuff and sitting in one spot going back and forth through a certain maneuver.
Yeah. Okay, so then that's bike number 3.
Yeah. So, 1, 2, 3. So that's 4. The Fat Bob, the Dyna, and the 2 Street Glide.
That's right.
Yep. So then, let's see here. Next, sort of new, or up there with the newer bikes, I do have a 2019 Indian FTR. Super fun bike to ride. It's also been the hardest bike I've ever tried to set up of all my bikes.
Why is that?
It makes amazing power. It handles better. I mean, if I had to tell someone the honest truth, it makes more power than any of my Harleys off the showroom floor.
Wow.
It handles better than any of my Harleys off the showroom floor. But as far as making modifications to it and customizing it, it has been one of the hardest bikes to deal with. As far as there's a lot of electronics, it's got a built-in gyroscope. It's got everything under the sun on it is all electronically controlled. There's almost nothing that has any sort of physical input or physical output. So it's just been a super big challenge, but I've had a lot of help from Ryan Randall out at he works at Indian Motorcycle in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he's an amazing sort of guru when it comes to tuning some of these bikes and figuring out how to manipulate them. And that's a lot of what he does is so much beyond just tuning a motorcycle. He really gets in there and more or less tricks the motorcycle into doing things that you normally couldn't push with the parameters that you're able to adjust. So, like you say, he's done an incredible job. But we're getting there. We still have to split the motor apart to do a modified oil pickup, which is something I've never had to do to any of my Harleys before. They all had oil pans or oil tanks, whereas the Indian, the oil pan or sump, whatever, is built into the middle of the motor. So anyways, hopefully we'll be doing a lot more sort of fun riding with that bike into the future. But for right now, I'm trying to ride it seldom and not melt the crank in it from riding wheelies and running it dry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then after that, I've got a series of Sportsters and Roadsters. I've got my 2000.
Those are your favorites, right?
I think they're my favorites just because they're so easy to ride. You can take them anywhere. You can literally do just about anything. I mean, if I had someone, showed me a giant jump ramp and said, all right, one of your bikes has to survive, making this jump, that Sportster would without a doubt be it. It's just it's a robust machine. It's not advanced by any way, shape, or form, whether it's the handling or the power, the motor, the electronics, the gadgets. There's just none of that stuff really on those bikes. So they're very dependable, very easy to set up, and can very quickly go from being a fun on-road bike to a fun off-road bike. Or we ride them on the ice in the winter. We have paddle tires on. Paddle tires on one of them, so we can go take it up sand dunes. And so there's kind of, like I say, there's just almost nothing you can't do with those bikes. So I like to have several of them at my disposal to kind of have different purposes for them. So on that note, I've got a 2020 1200 Roadster that we are currently setting up. It's going to probably become more of the regular stunt bike because that's the bike that gets used the hardest and gets pushed the hardest at shows and stuff like that. So I've got a 2020 that's going to become my stunt bike. The current 2016, which is my red and black Roadster, that one will get rebuilt into a street tracker. So it's going to be kind of a performance oriented Harley, something kind of along the lines of what the FTR is for a performance handling machine. So we'll be having a lot of fun with that. I also have a 2013 Harley Roadster that was one of my previous stunt bikes. We've completely rebuilt it, put a 1250 motor in it and all sorts of stuff. It's all set up for the stunt riding. I don't think I'll probably ever ride it again. So it's probably a bike that I'll sell very soon or auction off and make room for another bike.
That's right.
But then last but not least is my black and silver 2010 Iron. It now has a Roadster front end on it, so a lot of people see it and think it's a Roadster, but it's actually an old 2010. That was my very first Harley that I ever bought. It was my original stunt bike. After that, it got turned into kind of an off-road bike. Did a round for that. After that, it got turned into an off-road tracker.
Sure.
And now it's kind of finally been rebuilt, probably for the last time, into the black and silver tracker that it is. And it's got some really cool parts on it. The chassis Design Corporation swing arm on it with a 1-inch extension, and that helps us run the paddle tire or big knobby tires on it and not have clearance issues. So that bike kind of will really go just about anywhere you point it.
What percentage of modifications between all your bikes that you've owned do you actually change it from the stock? So when you get a stock bike, what percentage? Like 20%, 30%?
Yeah, I would honestly probably say, I'd say I'm probably somewhere around that 35%. It's like generally frames, motors internally are all generally left kind of stock, but when it comes to any of the extra parts. Beyond that, we keep the stock wheels generally, but and obviously tins and some body panels. But after that,
That's a
handlebars,
lot.
brakes, tires, foot pegs, shocks, seat, intake, exhaust, sprockets, and chains obviously go on instead of the belts. Um, and brake lines, the ECMs are replaced with Thundermax ECMs, and so anyways, there's definitely a good amount that we change on it, but we really keep the foundation of the bikes and don't get too crazy on changing the foundation of the motor, of the frame itself, and really focus on the parts that control all those things.
Have you ever thought or are considering to ever just build your own bike from the ground up?
I have considered it. I think my biggest challenge has been that so we've got a house. I've got like a 3-car garage, and so I just rattled off all those bikes. There's also a Honda Grom stuffed in there in the midst of it. So it's like I've got all these bikes jammed in there, and it's I hate to like complain because I'm super grateful for all the stuff, all the bikes I have. I'm super grateful for my house, for everything I have, but it's also super hard to work on anything but one project at a time. And it really requires me to look ahead and focus on, okay, what bike's going to be on the list? How long is it going to be on there? Do I have all the parts lined up? Do I have everything ready to go? Because if I don't, then I've got to figure out how to get this chassis off of the bike lift and make room and get it on blocks or jack stands so that I can work on the next thing that urgently needs some focus. So, I'm finally kind of getting to the point where we're going to be building a shop over the winter and into the spring. But hopefully by next summer, I should have a big, spacious new shop to work in. I'll be able to have, at least 3 or 4 bike lifts. And when I'm able to do that, I'll really be able to, use my creativity a lot more. I used to do a lot more creative building when I first started because I didn't have shows. I didn't have all the media jobs and different stuff that I get to do. And so I really missed that piece of, in the beginning, being able to just have so much time to just sit and mess with a welder and a grinder and plasma cutter and whatever else and just get creative with building the bikes. And unfortunately, it's become more work lately, but with the new shop and everything, it's going to give me the opportunity to really get back into doing some of the more creative stuff that I used to do, because I'll have the time and space to spread myself out and really tackle it and not feel pressured to get through things really quick.
That sounds very exciting, man. Congratulations for that. I can't.
Yeah.
I will make it up there one day and check it out and check out the shop and everything else. What projects are you currently working on now with the stunts? Where can we find you? Are you going to Sturgis or any events that you know of that we currently can see and visualize?
Yeah, we've done a couple of shows in a few places around the country that at the moment or at the time that we did the shows wasn't affected by the COVID and all of that stuff. So kind of upcoming right now, Shinko is actually, I spoke with them today, and they are actually working on they have a few different, they're sponsoring the Flat Track series out at Sturgis, and they're also going to have a big rig along with some other companies at Black Hills Harley. So they're kind of working on trying to pull together some last minute shows and riding demonstrations. We had about 3 different things lined up at Sturgis, and kind of between May and a few weeks ago, each one of those has kind of gotten shut down for whether it was lack of funding or whether it was the show that we were going to do down on Lozelle Street. They weren't able to they didn't want the liability. The city didn't want the liability of a large gathering down there. So it's kind of been a bummer as far as Sturgis. We did the Indian Thrill show last year, and that was a ton of fun. And so we were all kind of looking forward, thinking like, okay, here it is, the 80th Sturgis. This one's going to be wild and off the hook. And here a lot of the stuff that we've kind of had lined out and whatnot, events and demonstrations have been canceled. I know they're still doing some stuff out at some of the campgrounds, but unfortunately most of our stuff was going to be all centered kind of down being along Lozelle and Main Street and in conjunction with the city. And unfortunately, like I say, most of those things, along with motorcycle jump and a bunch of other stuff, has all kind of been shelved.
Yeah, it's very tough.
But yeah, it is. It's unfortunate. So, unfortunate. See me, like I say, hopefully we'll be doing. Hopefully, I'll be doing some demonstrations at Sturgis. Keep an eye open for the beginning of some of the flat track series or halftime stuff. There might be some shows there, or at Black Hills Harley. But right now, kind of that is the last look at that we've kind of got for shows right now. Luckily, like you say, we were able to do some this summer, but going into the fall, it looks like everybody's really sort of shutting down a lot of the big events or rallies or different stuff that they had hoped would finally be in the clear. But social media is always a great place. I mean, I'm always trying to do something wild and crazy. I do live in Montana, so there's a lot of beautiful scenery around here to shoot. So beautiful. Social media is always a good place to find me on Instagram at Rob_1WheelRevolution.com. And as far as keeping an eye open for future media, we just got done doing a big film project in conjunction with Icon 1000, which is the B-twin line of Icon Motorsports. So we just did a whole bunch of really fun shooting with them, cameras, drones, all sorts of stuff. Really amazing scenery kind of around Montana and on the edge of Wyoming. That stuff I believe will be dropping, I think September 15th or 16th, right around there. That stuff will be dropping. So there will be some really cool media that we did for that, and a really great video production that they'll be editing and putting together. So it'll be top shelf video quality and editing for sure. So kind of doing that. Unfortunately, going into the fall, last fall and through the winter, we were able to do the international motorcycle shows and do all the indoor shows in a lot of the major cities. We traveled from Dallas to Washington, D.C. to Cleveland to Minneapolis and did indoor shows. Did you do the IMS show last year in Vegas? So not that we didn't do that, and we tried to get into the Los Angeles stop. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, they didn't have enough room for us to perform there. Actually, sorry, I meant the not the IMS, the AIM Expo in Vegas. Oh, okay. Yep, the AIM Expo. Yeah, nope. And we haven't done the AIM Expo. I haven't done anything there for several years. What we've generally done is we do a lot of times in the fall. We'll do the NVP that's put on by Parts Unlimited and Drag Specialties, and we've done a lot of fun performances for them. It's always in Madison in the end of August, and it's always been a really fun party. A lot of the reps come in from Drag Specialties and Parts Unlimited, and it's just always a really fun time. And so it's really sad sometimes to see some of those events. We can all still connect over, social media and online and all that sort of stuff. But it's really a bummer to not go and get to connect with a lot of my sponsors and a lot of the people that, that I've known and that have supported me and kind of watched me grow from the very early days up till now. So anyways, I hope we get the chance going into next year to do a lot more personal face-to-face events and media exposure and stuff with people and get back to that. Yeah, it's such a fucking wild time, man. I remember in January, it's like we're in the future. It's 2020, and then from that moment, it just kind of
just went down, and it's changed everything. It just changed the way we do business, the way we talk to people. You go to stores, everybody's wearing masks. It's such an interesting time, and nobody knows when this will end. It's I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. It is. It's just it's been very challenging in so many ways, and I think just not really knowing what the clear path out or how it's going to end, and not seeing a easy resolution kind of really sort of puts you in a weird place of not even really being able to think and plan for the future, more than just
you have no idea what to do.
A couple of weeks or a couple of months.
Yeah, we're really it's wild. I mean, I don't know. I don't know anything other than I don't know when this will end. How is it affecting everybody over there? How is it changing your lifestyle? And is your town like really crazy about it? Do you know anybody that's been affected by COVID-19?
Yeah, so it definitely is affected. It's definitely affected, people around here. I think a big thing for Montana in the summer is the tourism industry, and it's been an interesting thing. There's a lot of places that have been hard hit, and then because we're in Montana and things aren't quite as populated, and we don't have so much social interaction between lots of people. So there's also kind of this other sort of group of people that are escaping a lot of these bigger cities and coming up here. So basically kind of instead of like Montana overall being affected by it, it's more like we have these real hot spots. Everywhere else is dead or almost non-existent. And then we have these real hot spots, and generally the hot spots are kind of being fueled and created by a lot of people coming from bigger cities and other states to get away from the COVID, but they're also coming and interacting with each other in, very close quarters, and it's causing sort of these. So it's kind of like everything will be fine here, and then all of a sudden it's like things don't kind of slowly climb up. It's kind of like all of a sudden instantly there's a surge or a spike in this area. Everything gets kind of shut down, closed down, a bunch of precautions. And then after that, of course, it dissipates fairly quickly and kind of goes away. But then, again, it kind of, flares up somewhere else that now tourists and people are sort of gathering and congregating. So it's kind of made it, again, a little challenging of not being able to have a consistent feel for it or a consistent feel for, it affecting our daily lives. It's kind of, it's here and it's gone, and it's here and it's gone. People in Montana, I'd say probably more don't take it seriously than take it seriously. It's just that there's a lot of rural space, there's a lot of folks that frankly, see the same 2 people, 3 people for an entire month straight, and that's kind of it. They
That's
see
insane.
their guy at the gas station, the guy at the post office, and their neighbor Frank, and and that's kind of it. So for them, it's been
awesome.
real hard to kind of and it's great, but it's also made it hard too, because it's hard for some of them to take it really seriously in their daily lives, because they just don't, they just aren't affected by it, and they just go about their normal lives like they always have. But obviously there's plenty of urban centers throughout Montana, and again, those tourist hotspots, where we get a lot of action and have to kind of clamp down really quickly to make sure it doesn't get out of control and affect the rest of Montana.
Have the people like this, have the people decided not to stop tourism? For example, in New York, they were saying a few months back, if you go north of New York, it's very nice land. It's very, it's away from the city. And there's been people that have houses. They live in New York City, but they have their own houses up in those suburban cities. And what's been happening is when those people go there, the neighborhood blocks them and says, "You can't come in here. We don't want we don't want that city. We don't know what you have. We don't know what you're bringing. Don't come in here." And then it turns into this big police have to show up, and it's like, I own the property. That's my property. How can I not go there? And it's insane. But has anything like that happened in Montana?
So as of now, it hasn't. If anything, people are, they're anxious. Once again, a lot of the rural areas and some of these places really depend on anywhere from 3 to 6 months of tourism. It could be a winter tourist destination. It could be summer tourist destination. It could be a city that is on the outskirts of Yellowstone Park and stuff like that. So as much as people have wanted to kind of take stands like that, I think a lot of them haven't, because a lot of them, they either got hit in the spring and now they're looking at another rough fall and winter ahead. And I think there's a lot of them that have kind of not necessarily look the other way completely, but have really taken a relaxed stance to it and kind of just trying to maintain financially their business or their livelihood, whatever it might be. So we haven't seen a lot of that yet. I think it could get interesting in the winter. We've got some areas where there's a lot of very wealthy, like we've got the Yellowstone Club, for instance, and it's literally just, probably I think there's maybe 50 to 60 cabins, up there, but I guess I shouldn't call them cabins. They're more like mansions, and all the people up there, they're all millionaires, billionaires. They're from, Texas oil companies, California tech companies, Seattle tech companies, and stuff like that. So there's some of these places that are that if you looked at the residents there, would probably 90% of them are not Montana residents and don't live there in some of these really upscale communities. So it'll be interesting to see, kind of going into fall and winter, how those places continue to operate and push forward, with the dynamic of it being comprised of mostly people from out of state, large cities, and frankly, a lot of places that are hit pretty bad so far with the virus issues.
Yeah. No, we'll see. We'll see what happens. That's all we can do. Sorry to take the conversation to that.
No, not at all. Not at all. Give me 2 seconds here. I'm just going to plug this in so this battery doesn't die.
Yeah, for sure.
Give me 2 seconds.
You got it. Okay. All right, let's get back. I have a 2020 Street Glide. I've done a few things, but you got your 2019 Street Glide. I want to know what you're doing, because I might do the same thing. So what break down what you have in mind that you're gonna fix up on the Street Glide?
Yeah, so for the 2020 Street Glide, actually it's a 2019, but might as well be a 2020 because it's still got pretty much 0 miles on it. So basically, what I'll start out with is internally we are going to leave the cam alone. We'll put some adjustable push rods and a couple of little things like that. But the biggest change internally we're going to do is we'll put a 124 on there. That's just going to give us a little bit more power and a little bit more force for some of the faster wheelies and some of the higher RPM or higher speed burnouts and stuff like that. The Bike Factory with a 107 or a 114 has plenty of power in first gear to have some good times, but kind of when you get to the second gear wheelies, third gear burnouts and stuff like that, bumping it up above anything above kind of 120 for the displacement really helps kind of give you that extra punch so you don't run out of throttle. So but internally, that's all we'll do. We're going to put a 124 kit in that comes from Zippers Performance. They're really a small team, but they're really a dedicated group of guys really focused on basically kind of machining custom engine parts and sort of really developing some varying motor kits that you can kind of get for just about any bike to either have a real mild, manageable power gain, or if you're trying to go to the drag strip and win some trophies, they've got some motor kits that will put your put you back in the seat, we'll say. So so that's going to kind of be it internally. The rest, once again, we're going to leave. We want to minimize the heat. We want to keep that. We want to keep really loose tolerances and a lot of the moving parts and a lot of that stuff. And we also want it to be easy to repair if we should need parts, so that we don't have to order in a ton of specialty stuff. We want to be able to get, the majority of it, walk into our local Harley dealership and get what we need. So next outside of that, I would say kind of then would go to, of course, a K&N intake. I generally like the air charger style ones. Basically, that's the style that puts the cone filter out in front of the motor. The reason I like that is, again, a lot of times we're doing wheelies or slow burnouts. We don't have a lot of airflow. And when you have the round filter that sits right next to the jugs, it literally just sucks in the hot air right off of the jugs and into the motor. The gains might be minimal with the air charger style and getting it ahead, but sometimes even just a few degrees cooler air going into that motor can make a difference.
Absolutely,
in how it performs.
That makes perfect sense.
So we'll do that. Next, we want to get air or exhaust out of the motor. So we'll go with a Vance and Hines. It's going to be a 2-into-1 shorty high output pipe. It's a pipe that's currently on my 2004, which is a complete custom pipe. You can't buy it for that. You can buy it for the newer Dynas and some of their other bikes, but unfortunately for the older touring bikes, it's a complete custom pipe. So we're developing this shorty 2-into-1 for the new bagger, and one of the cool things is I think this one's actually going to eventually be available for anybody to purchase. It's basically, it's a high-end tight pipe. It's, hugs the bottom of the bags and some stuff like that. So it just makes it that when you're doing the aggressive burnouts and drifting, that you're not dragging your nice new exhaust all over the asphalt. Along with that, I really like the Vance and Hines exhaust notes. I've used lots of other pipes over the years, but for when it comes to performance, when it comes to weight, when it comes to a variety of different looks and styles to choose from one company, as well as, like I say, the sound, I really feel like Vance and Hines really covers a lot of the market very well with their selection. So, like I say, we'll have a custom shorty pipe on there. Likely, I believe it's going to be chrome. I believe so.
What color is your bike?
So right now the bike is just black. It's just the bare bones basic Harley black. We'll likely change that. I don't know that it'll be too drastic. You definitely won't see some, bright neon flaky paint job with all sorts of decal and 20 different layers of paint. It's just not my style. I definitely enjoy looking at those bikes, but I like to keep it pretty plain, pretty mild. And once again, I also like to keep it so that if I crash or destroy it along the way, that it's an easy fix to repair. Getting back to the build. So from there, what I'll do is we'll have some MJK performance parts on there. We'll have floorboards. We'll have riser bar setup, as well as brake pedals. And then I do believe we're going to have some brakes on there. They were working on redesigning them the last time I spoke to them about their brake calipers. So we'll see what's available. So we'll have some really trick parts from them. The floorboards that they make and stuff really allows you to kind of move your foot around. It's got the floorboards have two angles to them, so there's kind of, you can put your foot more forward and be in more of a touring or cruising position, and then you can kind of pull it back more to more of the flatter portion of the board, and that gives you more of a feeling of like mid controls. So it's really nice on that bike because you can ride it normally, put your feet forward, then when I want to do aggressive stunting, I can pull it right back to the middle of the floorboards and have more of a mid-control feel.
Have you ever considered
Beyond
going
that,
have you ever considered going
I'm sorry?
full mid controls on a bagger?
I haven't. I think for me, a lot of it, especially with the bigger bikes, is I like to try to keep and tie in as much stuff as I can to give the bike its original feel. And while a performance bagger, when I think about it in my mind, would definitely have mid controls on it, no floorboards and whatnot. For me, I feel like it's just not a bagger without some floorboards on it. When you see it in a wheelie and you've got the big floorboards in the air, it just, again, it just adds more dimension to the bike and more visual weight, if you will, to it. That kind of keeps it the big touring bike it is.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah. Managing that 124 kit as well as the intake and the exhaust. We use a Thundermax ECM. Basically, it's not a piggyback module. It doesn't reflash your stock ECM. You completely pull the stock ECM out of it and put in their custom billet made ECM. And it basically what that does is it gives us full control over the bike. There's really nothing, there's no aspect of it that we can't change. And the only limiting factors of any changes we make is the sensor or the unit that's on the bike. It might be it could be some sort of it could be a speed reading, and if the speed reading, if the pickup only maxes out at 120 miles per hour, well then that's it. But whatever the equipment is capable of on the bike, the Thundermax can adjust that piece of equipment or that sensor, or take that input and redirect it, and you can really just do about anything. So that's been a huge part of being able to control the bikes and manipulate them, is been working with Thundermax and their team to not only fine tune maps and tuning for bikes, but also they've assisted with building custom firmware so that we can control the bikes once again in ways that they were never intended to be manipulated, and that you could never do with another tuner, because you would hit certain ceilings or floors with adjusting parameters to where you wanted to take them. So that really kind of dials in all of the mechanical functions and the operation of the bike internally. Now, everything we move to from here on out is all sort of exterior input feedback parts. So we'll go right to the progressive suspension. I'll have progressive 990s on the back. It's their top of the line remote reservoir shock.
Are you going to go
high speed?
Are you going to go higher? Are you because right now it's what, 12 inches?
Yeah. So I'll go. I like to be a little bit like, once again, I kind of like the touring bikes to sit like a touring bike.
Yeah.
So while there would be advantages to putting, say, a 12 and 3/4 to up to 14.5 inch shock, I like to try to keep my touring bikes kind of around the 12 to 12.5 range. It still lets them sit and look like a touring bike, but with the added ground clearance and some of that stuff that's important for some of the technical maneuvers we do. Up front, we'll put a progressive suspension cartridge kit, and basically that, once again, is if you've ever upgraded, better springs and fluid in a front end, and you think, wow, that feels incredible. Once you try one of their front cartridge kits, it's mind blowing. You just, once you feel it, you realize that there's no amount of tuning that you could do with the springs and fluid and some of that simple stuff to ever get the performance characteristics that you get when you use their cartridge kit.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't done the upgrade before. I had the 990s on my FXTLS, but I didn't do the front cartridges. A buddy of mine, he did the whole thing front and back, and he says it was a game changer, especially through the canyons and when you're doing anything performance.
Yeah, it really does. It really controls the nose diving and some of that stuff when you're hard braking into turns, or just even taking a sharp turn and feeling kind of the G forces building, and it really sort of keeps that bike in a good position to handle your inputs in the handlebars and everything.
Have you ever wheelied a stock Harley? I mean, like the landing or when your front end comes down, isn't it just terrible for the shocks?
Yeah. So even like 2 days ago, I posted up a video, and it's me wheeling my new completely bone stock Harley Roadster 1200. So there's literally not a single modification on the bike, completely stock,
Belt driven,
belt
everything.
and all.
Wow.
Everything, yep. Not a single thing changed. Oh, I guess I did put the Daymaker headlight on it, for look.
Oh, that's what did it. Of course.
That's what I did.
I
Yeah,
knew there was something. I'm kidding.
that was something. So, but anyways, I went out. There's a video of me wheeling it and surfing it, and there's also been another video previously of me doing a big long rolling burnout on it. But the stock bikes, they're capable in it, and it can be done. It's just they're just not set up for the wear and tear of it. The clutches. I could probably hop on just about any stock bike and get it to do a wheelie. But to get on a stock bike and repeatedly wheelie it, or repeatedly do burnouts on it, or repeatedly do that stuff is where you would really start to notice the difference between the performance parts and the OEM parts. The OEM parts, like I say, they're made to perform well, but they just are not made to handle the repeated abuse. So that's kind of, again, one of the big benefits of a lot of these aftermarket parts is they can handle the abuse a lot more and take the repetitive beating without failing on you.
Yeah, that's what I was talking to. Actually, I've had this conversation with many of my guests, but it's the aftermarket, existence of today for Harley versus what it was before is insane. There's so many wonderful aftermarket companies helping create our bikes into beasts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, there's a lot of great companies. Like I say, I get to work with a lot of them, but I definitely I watch a lot of them that I don't work with and stuff, and see a lot of the fun creative parts that they've come up with, or just taking things to the next level, the beyond what was previously considered as good as you could get for something. So it's cool to see, like I say, a lot of the progression and fast tracking of parts and development that's kind of happened, that used to sometimes take many years for companies to finally get something dialed in. And now it's kind of like they're able to release a bike, and generally within a year, you've got a really good selection of aftermarket performance and aesthetics parts to kind of choose from.
Yeah. So what else on the street?
So here, yeah. So back to the street glide. All right. So now we've kind of got we got the suspension covered on brakes. I've used Galfer brakes for a long time. I got into using them because at the time that I started riding, there was a couple of floating rotor options, but there really wasn't a lot out there. Galfer had just started to make some front rotors. They didn't make any rear rotors. So I've been working with Galfer for a long time, and I actually kind of helped them develop. Now you see a lot of Harleys using the floating front rotors, and you also see a matching rear rotor. And so I was actually sort of the first person to do that. And basically I took their front rotors and custom machined the carriers so I could put them on the back wheels. And basically Galfer started getting so many phone calls of people asking and wanting to buy those. And then Galfer was asking me, like, hey, how are you doing this? Or what are you doing to them to make it work? And how's it holding up? And, all that type of stuff. And, so anyways, that was, kind of a part that, because back at that point, Galfer was only offering solid steel rear wave rotors and no full floating ones. So anyways, I started doing that. And so, here we are now a decade later, and Galfer now sells full floating pre-machined rear wave rotors just because I liked the look of them, and I loved the look of the full floating, but they didn't have any, and I didn't like the steel. Full steel ones didn't cool down fast enough, and so I was just like, all right, well, there's not a whole lot keeping me from putting these on here. So I continue to do that, and that's exactly what I'll do with the new Street Glide. It'll have Galfer floating wave rotors up front. We'll have floating wave rotor on the back. I also use their braided lines. You can get them in any color, shape, style you want. So I'll also have their performance brake lines on there. A lot of that stuff I notice, especially when I'm doing shows or doing a lot of aggressive rolling burnouts and stuff like that. Brake fade used to be a big problem, and I can honestly say since I started using all the Galfer wave rotors and all that stuff, that my brake fade issues almost became non-existent.
Yeah. So,
getting on down, we might as well just go right onto the rest of the wheel. I'll have Shinko tires on there. I'll most likely use the 777. It's a soft, grippy compound, excellent for braking, excellent for wet weather conditions. It does wear down a little bit quicker than some of their longer lasting tires.
What do you usually get?
But obviously,
what do you usually get at what mileage do you change it usually? How long do they usually last you?
So that's a question that I honestly could never tell you the answer to, because there hasn't, in the last 10 years, even if it was my cruiser bike, there hasn't been a single bike or a single tire that got removed off of a bike that didn't go through some sort of a long smoky burnout at some point, or get ridden on one wheel for a super long period. And obviously, the burnouts, or just even riding a wheelie, and putting all 800 pounds of that bagger on a single tire instead of two tires, it does wear them much faster and in different ways than when they get ridden normally. So
do you change your own tires?
I do. Yep. That was kind of one of the first purchases I started. Once I started doing all the Harley stuff, I started doing a lot more burnouts and a lot of stuff like that. And the $25 that the local motorcycle shop was charging me to change tires started to add up very quickly. And so my next purchase, kind of right when I got my first couple of Harleys, was bought a tire machine and all that good stuff, so I could change them myself.
That's fucking awesome.
So
that's rad.
Yeah. So anyways, we'll have Shinko's front and back on there. It'll allow the bike to handle amazing as far as turns and grip and all that sort of stuff. I probably, like I say, won't get the longevity that you would get out of a normal touring tire. They have a couple other tires. They have a 777 though is just going to be kind of my go-to. It's also got a lot of sizes available. So, kind of when you're trying to find an oddball tire for all sorts of bikes, like you said, they usually have one of that style. Next up, I would say, is kind of my rider input, which I consider kind of, for me, is my seat as well as the grips. A lot of people think that I do a lot of input with my feet, and I will weight the foot pegs at different times for different tricks. But I would say more so me controlling the bike, especially on one wheel, is done through the seat and through the grips. So I've got, on most of my bikes, I've got some custom built Saddleman seats. As most of the people in the V-twin world and motorcycle world know, they make some of the best seats out there, hands down. Just really, really great, classy styles, good build quality. And
which model do you go with?
So a lot of them I run sort of a custom built style seat. It started out originally as my Sportster seat, and then we carried the styling over to my bagger, as well as over to the Dyna. And basically it's more of a narrow back high seat, whereas a lot of like the step up that you see that's really popular, those are sort of full width in the back and full height. The reason I don't like that is because I like to have all the pressure that I'm putting on the bike centered right in line with my spine and kind of straight up my back. So if you look at a lot of my stunt seats, they taper up in the middle. And that's basically so that basically all along my tailbone and the lower part of my back, I have full contact in the dead center of my back. When you have the full width, like the step-up seat, they're super nice and comfortable. But when you feel your weight all the way on the back, you kind of feel the pressure on the left and right, kind of where your ass cheeks are, as opposed to having it dead center. And so just for me, for stunt riding, it's all about balance and control. So it's important to really have my main contact of my seat be in the dead middle of my weight distribution.
Yeah, get the right support.
But I'll have a Saddleman seat on there. We'll likely use a firmer foam than you would in a lot of their more cush touring seats and stuff like that. But nonetheless, it'll be like all the other Saddlemans that you see out there, and have some gripper on the top and some cool diamond stitching likely somewhere, and then some customization with my logo on the back of it.
I was just there at their warehouse here by Long Beach, and I just found out they do custom logos. You put your own brand on the sides, and they're a great company.
Yeah, they really are, and it's been, they've been another company that I've worked with now for maybe 5-6 years, and they've done most of their growth in that last 5 to 6 years. So once again, it's been super cool to see the Saddleman team grow and bring technology in and simplify processes. And, a lot of it for them has really been about creating consistency so that every single seat that goes out the door is, the same quality, the same standards and stuff, which is, generally in the past been really hard to do with a lot of physical manual labor and getting different results depending on who stitched or stapled your seat up or that type of stuff. So, just really cool. Like I say, that seat is very important. I can't, a lot of people see me surfing the bikes. They see me standing on the seat. Of course, they see me sitting backwards on my Roadster. I'll stand up on the seat backwards, full length stand up on it, going down the road.
So wild.
And all of that stuff is really, really all just made possible through the seat and through customizing it, both with the foam density as well as the shaping and the gripper, to make a lot of those tricks possible. So yeah, definitely a good company to work with.
Very much so.
Next, I think probably is, your hands. Your hands are so much about controlling the bike, whether it's the throttle or whether it's just holding on to it. So I've started using ODI grips this year. And they, like I say, it's an incredible difference compared to before. I just kind of bought some nice grips that were, cheap and they worked good. But I've really been able to appreciate some of their waffle patterns and some of their stuff. And I might not notice it when I jump on the bike immediately, but especially after riding a bike all day long, I really noticed the difference between a good quality grip and a nice looking underperforming grip, in how your hands feel and how well you're able to control the bike at the end of the day when you've been pushing it for 8, 9, 10 hours. So we'll get some ODI grips up there. This bike will be a fly-by-wire model. There's obviously fly-by-wire and there's a fly-by-cable or throttle-by-cable. I like them both. I probably like the cable a little bit better. It's a little bit more forgiving. And it just, there's something about the feel of a throttle when you pull it and you feel the cable moving through there. Throttle by wire's been fun. But it's very sensitive. It's very touchy. It does allow some modifications to the throttle mapping for the input, which has been important for some of our stunt stuff. But it's also like I say, has its own challenges. So ODI does. They have throttle by cable models, and they also have now just been developing and slowly releasing some of the throttle by wire grips and models. So it makes it really easy to, of course, slap some new grips on, because now you're not having to deal with cutting your old ones off and trying to shimmy a new grip over a throttle tube and all that type of stuff. Now you literally just take out a couple of screws, slide the whole tube and everything off, slide the new one on. It's got all the teeth to engage with the throttle position sensor on the handlebar, and you're ready to go.
Question, we're talking about the technology that exists now on the Harleys. When you do your stunts, you got to disable ABS, right, for the bikes that have ABS, or you rock it with the ABS?
So that's a good question. I get that a lot. And ABS has its place. For doing like a stunt show type situation, I would always shut ABS off. Don't really want it. I like to be able to lock up the rear tire coming into a drift or coming into an aggressive burnout. And obviously the ABS prevents a lot of that. So I'll generally we've done everything from bypassing the ABS module completely with a brake line and just running it straight from the master cylinder to the caliper. We've also we've pulled ABS fuses before, which will also disable the ABS. And then lastly, like on the FX DLS, we just reach down under the little cover and basically pop the connector loose where the wiring harness connects to the ABS module. All those ones disable it. And like I say, it does come in handy for stunt show type settings. However, we've done some commercial shoots and some video shoots where we wanted the ABS to keep working. So, for instance, we had to do a rolling burnout through this asphalt that was covered with a ton of gravel. So normally, I would have ABS off. I would go doing a burnout into there. My front tire would get enough loose rock under it, and eventually my front tire is going to lock up and push away from me. So I will actually engage the ABS in that situation, and then I can start a rolling burnout still without a problem. But when my front tire hits that gravel, the ABS will kick in, and it'll keep my front tire rolling through that gravel so that the front tire never locks up completely, and we can get the shot. So there's actually been, like I say, a handful of times where the ABS, if I hadn't had it, I don't know if I could have got the shot.
Yeah, no, it's a great piece of technology. I remember when it first came out, like a lot of people, the old school people were against it. They're like, fuck ABS, I brake better than ABS, but now I can't even own a bike without it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it is. It's funny when you're, on a touring bike, especially, it definitely, you really notice when it comes into play and when it helps, and those few times that, might have got your heart racing, but the ABS kicked in and just kept things rolling along smoothly. And like I say, and then you get into the performance aspect of things, and it does become a little bit more, negatable whether or not it has any purpose anymore. But for new riders and people just out there cruising through varying conditions, I definitely say ABS has come to help.
Yeah, no, 100%. So we got grips now.
Yeah. So now we got some grips done. Now let's move up to gauges. Gauges are super important for me. I constantly, no matter what bike it is, I constantly, while I'm stunting it or pushing the bike through its limits, I'm constantly watching everything from head temperature. I'm watching my oil pressure, and a lot of times too, watching RPMs at different points to keep things in safe limits, but push it right to the edge. So I've the last probably again 5-6 years, I've been using the Dakota digital gauges. They make these really rad gauges. They started out as just single LED color. Now they've got full multicolor LCD screens.
Really?
But the cool thing really about them, I mean, the looks and style of them is awesome. But what's really cool is just the features that you don't get out of a normal gauge. So It allows me, like I say, to see my head temperature. Obviously, some of the bigger touring bikes and some of that stuff, you can see it, but like Sportsters and those bikes, you have no idea what your head temp is. It also allows me to adjust the Speedo reading. So when I go and throw a sprocket on my bike and it throws my speed reading off, now with the Dakota digital gauge, I can go in there, I can adjust my speed readout and basically get it dialed back in so that with my new gearing on the bike, I can still look down and know exactly how fast I'm going.
I'm looking them up right now.
Yeah. Like I say, the MLX gauges is the newest ones that have come out, and these are the full color ones.
Those are badass.
The really neat thing about it is you can customize every single color on that screen. So whether it's just a color you like or a color that's easier for you to see, or if you have a custom bike you've built that has, some particular colors in it, basically you can take your Dakota digital gauge and you can customize all the colors. You can customize the different readouts to show information that's important to you, or if it's stuff that doesn't matter to you, you can hide it. So it's just really a universal format to fit a lot of different applications, whether it's cruising and touring, whether it's racing, or in my case, stunt riding, and just a lot of really useful features in the gauge that come in handy that sometimes you wouldn't think about, or you wouldn't expect to be a big benefit, but it is. And it's actually really cool too. You can sync your phone to it, make all your color adjustments and stuff through your cell phone. So anyways, they make all sorts of gauges for hot rods and old cars and retro mod stuff and whatnot. But once I found them for gauges, like I say, I was really pumped to be able to watch some of the stuff. And like I say, for me, when I'm pushing those bikes, it's really important to watch the heat, watch the oil pressure, and that type of stuff, because that's obviously the livelihood of the motorcycle at that point when you're beating on it that heavily.
Yeah, of course. No, very cool, very exciting. And you could see it clearly in the daylight.
Yep. You can do a black background or a white background, and basically you can set it to stay one or the other, or you can set it to automatically invert the colors. It actually has a little light diode, sensing diode built into the screen. So it will, there's even been times where I'm riding it and I'll ride into a tunnel and the gauge color will invert so I can see when I'm in the tunnel. And then the second you ride back out into the daylight, it just takes a few seconds and the gauge colors will invert themselves again back to the easy to read in the daytime.
I'm
mode.
sold.
So
I'm sold.
Yeah, like I say, it's just they're super cool. I've power washed them. I've taken them and freezing weather on the ice and snow all the way to, like I say, 110 degrees in the desert and sand, and obviously power washed them more times than I could ever count. And like I say, they're just really trick gauge. So definitely a good investment for anybody that spends a lot of times behind their handlebars.
Awesome. Great recommendation.
Yeah. Next, let's see here. Where are we? We've got that. We've got performance. I'll definitely I'll have a flare windshield on there. Generally, I've gotten a lot of those from Clockworks in the past. I've had a couple of different styles and sizes on my baggers. They make really good, quality products that, I've stood on my flare windshields. I've throwing bags on top of them inside the moto van and all sorts of stuff. So, they make just some really good quality products that handle the abuse and take a beating.
They're a great shield, and they've been around forever.
Yeah, and I think that's it too. Is they've been around for so long, and they really have been a pillar of the industry. So it's always good to incorporate some parts from those guys into it. Aside from that, I'll throw an Elite Easy Pull clutch on there. They make a Harley version that works with the Harley cable. Now, this bike that I'm going to be setting up, this will be my very first wheelie bike that's going to have a hydraulic clutch on it. So I'm expecting it to be a challenge, and there's going to be some adjustments. Elite's likely going to have to make a custom lever for it, because currently they only make cable model clutch levers, but I'll throw one of those on there. I'm not sure quite what to expect from the master cylinder, the stock clutch master cylinder. There could be, depending on, once I get a chance to use it, I may put a aftermarket master cylinder on it to get a little bit more leverage or an easier pull at the clutch itself. On down on the other end of that line, though, I will most certainly have a Barnett Scorpion clutch. It's a newer part that I've started putting on the bikes in the last year and a half, and I cannot say enough about them. They gave me one for my 2004 bagger a year and a half ago when I started working for them, and I mean, I have beat on that clutch and had it adjusted poorly and abused it, and so many things that should have totally fried that clutch by now. But if you're building any kind of performance motorcycle or want to ride aggressively, I seriously can't say enough about their clutch setups. They take a beating. They always work. If you get the coil spring model, you can really adjust it and get some amazing performance characteristics out of it.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
So that kind of sums up the clutch. Down into there, like I say, Barnett Scorpion all day long. We'll throw a clear cover on there. They have some really cool clear covers so that you can see the billet clutch hub and basket and all that stuff underneath the cover. One thing that a lot of people ask me about is I run automatic transmission fluid in my primary, especially when I use the Barnett. I've always used Formula Plus, but Barnett mentioned, hey, you might think about running some ATF in there. And what it does is it really helps with a smooth clutch engagement. Obviously, I'm dropping the hammer all the time, whether it's burnouts, wheelies, that sort of stuff. And, I want my clutch to grab nice and firm, but I also, if it grabs too hard, then it just spins the rear tire and it's hard to get the front wheel in the air. So I started running automatic transmission fluid, and sure enough, it does like they said, and it has made the clutch engagement much smoother than what I've typically experienced with other primary fluids.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You should be a consultant for all the shit you put these products through. Or have
I do my best to try and consult and help people out there. I try to do it cautiously too, because a lot of times, there's been so much thought and effort put into what I've done that sometimes it can be almost too much information to try to explain to somebody for them to get the exact same result. So I generally try to help people where I can and get them pointed in the right direction and whatnot, aside from building their bike for them via direct messages and over the internet.
Yeah, no, because you're putting these products through hell and back. You should have your own certification stamp or something. They'll appreciate it. One more really great part that'll be on there is I'll have some performance machine wheels, and basically. Those will be, I'll run a 21 inch up front, and for this bike in particular, we're going to run an 18 inch on the back. On my current bagger, we've got a 21 and a 16. So it'll be about the same. Once again, I don't really like to get into much wider of a tire. The wider tires don't handle nearly as well. They'll ride a straight wheelie better than the narrower tires. But when you're trying to wheelie around turns and bends, or even if it's just at a stunt show and I'm trying to correct and not ride a wheelie over a manhole cover or some big hole in the asphalt, the narrower tires will steer in a wheelie much better than the wider tires. So what do you do?
So generally on most of my bikes, I try to keep it as OEM width as possible and avoid getting big fat tire kits on
So
there.
OEM right now is what, 180?
I believe for that bike, yes, I believe it's 180 on that one. So that's what'll likely stay on there is a 180, and like I say, it'll be a good tire for it. It's about 180 is about as wide as I like to go. That's also, I believe that's the same width that's on my Fat Bob. It's a 16-inch rim on the back of there, but I believe it is also to a 180 tire, and it's great, but it definitely makes it a lot harder to steer with those big wide rubber tires on there.
Yeah, no, bigger tires usually on motorcycles are not good. It's actually really bad for the swing arm as well. I knew this one.
Yeah.
I knew this one person. They did a custom swing arm, and they did like a 300 in the back, and unfortunately, their swing arm snapped. They were on the 17 around San Jose, like going from Santa Cruz to San Jose, and their whole back just snapped, and they passed away, unfortunately. But but wider tires are definitely not. I mean, they look interesting,
especially when it's not factory equipped.
Yeah, especially. Yeah, this was like a custom chopper with this super. Anyways, so then you're gonna do the tires. What about swing arm?
So swing arm currently we'll just keep the factory swing arm on there. We have been in talks with MJK of trying to get our hands on one of their custom
they look
swing arms
so
at some
fucking
point.
nice. I really want one of those too. They look very nice.
They really are. They're beautiful, and the performance characteristic of it is incredible. But it's definitely one of those super spendy parts and super time consuming for what it takes them to make it. So we're hoping that we can kind of find a time when they've got a break and are going to pop some out, and that we can get some extra raw materials to them and hopefully do that. And I think I've covered a lot of the performance parts that are initially going to go on this bike. It's going to have a lot more stuff on it, like this MJK swing arm, or like an inverted front end. So there will be a lot of stuff that will develop over time. But for right now, originally that was kind of the plan, is to fully deck it out. But since the bike's been stuck in Canada, I haven't gotten to work on it or ride it.
You're
now
suffering.
My mission is just to get it back here, get it set up as quickly as I can so I can at least start utilizing it. And then as time goes on, I'll really start to develop more custom parts and more really trick stuff for it.
You're suffering. I know you are. I know you're suffering not having your bike and not being able to do that.
Yeah, especially when it's at this point too. It's also the most expensive stunt bike.
Yeah.
That I've got my hands on.
Oh,
so
that's right.
Kind of hard when your biggest, most expensive stunt bike is sitting collecting dust, and hopefully the battery's still got a charge in there.
Oh, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't.
Yeah.
Rob,
yeah, it's been sitting in Canada since February. So.
Rob, question. Let's get into your gear, and I want to talk about your helmet. Your helmet's fucking awesome. What is it? The Icon. Which model is that?
Yeah. Yep. So all the helmets I use are all developed by Icon Motorsports. And then they have sort of another sort of offshoot that's the Icon 1000 brand. Once again, they were one of the very first companies. I think they were technically like the second company to ever sponsor me, way back in the day when I was kind of just this wild kid with a dream. And and there's several companies at that time that were willing to take a risk and sponsor some guy who wanted to start stunt riding Harleys and do all this stuff. So that's been another company that I've really gotten to see them grow and watch them develop product. And it has been amazing to see, just the way that their design, the technology that they've incorporated, and the graphics and stuff that they've brought into the riding gear over the years has been super cool. Constantly working on new shell designs, and a lot of companies they'll get locked into a shell design, and it's kind of like they don't steer very far from it as they kick out new models as the years go. And it's been cool with Icon to see them kind of, basically create helmets that if you asked me 10 years ago to drop some wild ideas, like I never would have imagined that that's the route they would have gone down. So they have some
That's
really super
awesome.
cool helmets. They've got the probably I'd say my longtime favorite is the Airframe Pro. They have a full carbon version, which is super duper light. It has your traditional normal motorcycle visor on it, so super nice to be able to flip it up when you're riding in hot weather or when you just got to talk to somebody or something like that. Excellent fit, and you better believe I've crashed in them a few times and put them to the test, and clearly I'm still here and doing just fine. So they're definitely doing their job. They also came out recently with a new Airflight model as well as a Variant Pro model. The Airflight is it's a very unique looking helmet. It doesn't have a traditional style visor. It's more of a full face visor that comes down to the bottom of your chin, and it's just a really unique looking helmet. But the cool thing about it is it gives you a really wide viewing perspective that I don't see in some other helmets, and it also has the ability to remove the visor, the traditional motorcycle visor, and then you can put, I guess I should say, remove the traditional shield, the face shield, and you can actually put on a little visor and run goggles with it. So
Oh, nice.
it's kind of a really cool thing where you can take this street helmet and go from a really comfortable street helmet, and with a couple of minutes and a couple of little accessories, you can turn it into a dirt bike or an off-road helmet that's super comfortable and equally as safe. So the
That's
new
very
Variant
cool
Pro,
and convenient.
yeah, the new Variant Pro, lighter, much more comfortable. A lot of people, it has the big visor up above the face shield on it, and a lot of people feel like that with that they're going to have a lot of wind issues, and Icon's really developed those visors well so that air and wind can pass through them. So like I say, from those features, drop down shields inside of the helmet so that you can on some of the models, so that you can have a clear visor on the outside for riding at night, and then you can have a tinted drop down shield so that you can ride at night. So anyways, just lots of really cool stuff from the Icon team. I think the biggest thing, about working with them is they really support the core, down at the core. They support riders and they support people, and they don't always just support. I've seen them help a lot of people and support a lot of people over the years that maybe hadn't made a name for themselves. Maybe they were for what you would consider a nobody, if you will, but they really look for dedicated individuals in the motorsports industry and have continued to support people like that, people like myself on the fringe of the motorcycle industry. Obviously, I'm a stunt rider, I'm not a racer. I'm not doing these big broadcasted, televised sort of things, but they've been a huge instrumental part. And I can honestly say, of all the companies that I've worked with, all the companies that I've done stuff with, both just in my safety as well as supporting me as a rider, like I definitely would not be here talking to you right now if it wasn't for the team at Icon and their dedication to keeping motorsports alive, keeping motorsports fun, and keeping motorsports creative, and not just going down the same path that everybody else does because it's easier, because that's what the mainstream market is doing.
Well, shout out to them, and we appreciate it, the listeners appreciate it. We all appreciate companies like that because we're all one community, and it's we need each other's back, and it's good that they have that much belief on new riders or new stunt people or people that don't have that brand. So what you just said is amazing, and thank you, Icon, for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and beyond their helmets, jackets, all that sort of stuff, they've really got a great diverse collection of, whether it's light duty vented gear all the way to your heavy duty, wet conditions, fall, winter type riding. They really have a good variety that they cycle through as time goes. And I think, it's, once again, they're constantly developing new stuff, and they're constantly, they're not afraid to fail. They're not afraid to try something new that nobody's done, or try a material that's never been done and not have it work out. But they always pay attention to it. They always pay attention and learn from it, and are constantly trying to make their jackets, their gloves, their riding pants, their footwear, and even their casual wear that much better than it was before. So
where are they out of?
Just super. So they're actually out of Portland, Oregon.
Portland,
and,
Oregon.
It's a lot of people look at the branding, and they look at everything that Icon does, and they think it's this big, huge team with all this, money to blow and all this type of stuff. And it's really, it's a quaint, tight knit group of people. Most of them all are dedicated motorcycle riders, or they're passionate about it in one way or another. And they really buckle down and work together as efficiently as you could possibly be, and turn out awesome products, rad designs, and sort of cool new ideas that you would expect from a much bigger firm or a much bigger group of individuals. So it's really cool when you get to meet the Icon team, to see how small and humble they are, and the cool results that they are able to make.
I might reach out to them. I love listening to those, talking to people in the motorcycle industry and the entrepreneurship of the industry, because it's awesome.
And Icon does. They have a real cool story. The guy who started it, Kurt, he just, he came from a military background and loved motorcycles and lots of stuff, but he just did not, once he got out of service and stuff like that, and even during his service, he just, he could tell you in a lot better words, but he just was not impressed with the gear out there, and the gear out there didn't excite him. It didn't seem like it fit the younger, edgier riders and people that wanted to look really good and also have gear that performed really well. And I think, Kurt's really taken a dream of his for a long time and really developed it into an incredible brand, and it continues to resonate out through the rest of the team that he's brought on board over the years.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really cool to hear. I wanted to ask you earlier, can you tell me real quick about your team? Who is your team? How long have people been working with you?
Yeah, so my team kind of it's been obviously going for a good decade now as far as shows and stuff. It's evolved over the years. Obviously stunt riding is, again, it's a fringe activity. You can make money doing it, but you got to be very creative. You got to be very hardworking and very self-driven and motivated. And it involves a ton of time, when the spotlight's not on you to dedicate to it. So the team has evolved over the years. I've had several different guys that have came and rode with me for a number of time, and generally, it's either family stuff that they need to be home more. Obviously, when we're doing shows and doing all this stuff, we're traveling all the time during a regular summer season. I would be lucky to be home one weekend out of a month. So
that's tough.
It takes its toll on people, and their families and stuff like that to be heavily involved in it. So I had a guy from Florida that him and I sort of started in the beginning, and we rode for a couple of years. And then I had another gentleman out of Spokane, Washington, that rode with me for another few years. And then for about the last 3 to 4 years, I've got a guy named Joe Beavers out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he's been doing. He primarily does all the shows and does all of that stuff with me when I do the stunt shows that are branded under One Wheel. But a lot of times I do ride with other teams and stuff like that. I mentioned the IMS, the indoor stunt shows we did all winter. for the Progressive International Motorcycle Tour. And, I rode with another guy, Kyle Sliger, who's an incredible sport bike rider, and another gentleman, Bill Ramsell, who he rides a 390 KTM. I'm constantly riding with different people, and a lot of it just depends on the situation. Last year I did the Indian Thrill Show during Sturgis with Tony Carbajal. He's another, really talented rider. And so anyways, I kind of, for One Wheel, Joe and I are kind of the dedicated riders, but for all the other projects and all the stuff I do, I really try to mix it up and align myself with like-minded individuals that are serious about stunt riding and putting on great shows and great entertainment and stuff like that. So kind of bounces me all over the place, and I get to work with a diverse group of people. And then obviously that's the riding part of it, but there's also the support side of it. I've got several people, my wife Mariah, my friend Jen Procius, got my buddy Brandon Dawkins, and another buddy Alex Burr, and they kind of really help me run cameras, help me do road control, or lookout points on radios to make sure that we can safely pull off what we need to. And like I say, running the snap cameras. Brandon's really good at, he pilots the bike that we film off of. So we actually strap a camera person backwards on the motorcycle.
Wow.
With him so that we can get a lot of the cool shots we do.
Yeah.
And, so anyways, it's a diverse collection of people. It does slowly change over the years, and as time goes, and as people's lives get busy or not. And, but either way, we always have a real fun bunch of individuals that participate, whether it's in the shows themselves or whether it's doing some of the side work and some of the media work.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like you're wrapped around very good people. And then we just hit 2 hours. Do you want to give any advice to any new riders or any new stunt guys?
Yeah, absolutely. New stunt riders, once again, I mean, I think my biggest thing is start small, start humble. There's a lot of people that will, laugh or shame you for starting out on a little tiny bike or learning on a pit bike or a Grom, but it also a lot of the best people that are riding out there, they all started on much smaller bikes and kind of worked their way up. That's I'd just say my biggest thing is probably, whether it's a small bike or a big bike, my big thing is protect yourself and protect your bike. I wish I would have learned a long time ago. I had a couple of really bad crashes in the beginning, and it was all because I didn't understand how important the gear was. So whether it's you're too hot or you want to look cool or whatever it might be, there's really no good excuse for getting into stunt riding or getting into riding when you're newer and not taking the proper precautions. I sat out. There was a couple of months where I couldn't ride because I had road rash so bad. There's been times where I've had, huge medical bills, and obviously this was all in the very beginning before I got into riding professionally. But had I just worn the right gear in the beginning and done some of that stuff, it would have made learning much smoother. But I think just gear yourself up. If there's crash protection for your bike, get it for your bike. It will save you a lot of money down the road when you're trying to learn all that stuff. And I think that's for people that just want to learn to stunt in general. But, for people that want to get into it professionally like I do, that's definitely another level and another step there. And at that point, once you have your skills down, your basic skills down, you've got a good bike and you can keep it looking nice, at that point, it's really when you want to get into it professionally, it could be stunt shows, it could be doing commercials, it could be making media, photo shoots, that type of stuff. It's really about figuring out what do the companies need, what do they want? Because, you know, a lot of times I know what I would like to go shoot or what I would like to go do, and sometimes I still do for fun, but it's really, you know, you really got to think from a business point of mind, and how can I marry this thing that I love doing and that is so entertaining for me, and how can I make this into something that they can package and sell? And, you know, that's really what it's about, you know, to go from just being a average lot or stunt rider to being a professional stunt rider is really figuring out how to package your talent, package your passion, and put it into a form that they can use and that can make their business life a little bit easier and a little bit more profitable.
Wow, well, that's fucking amazing advice, and we all appreciate that. I want to thank you for your time. It took us a second to get this going, but we did it. And I want to say thank you for your time, your sponsorships, your who you are, and your stunts. And hopefully, next time I see you, you're gonna start working on that new the new shop starting this fall, right? And it'll be open maybe next year.
Yeah. We'll be, depending on how soon winter rolls in up here in Montana. You know, it kind of can put construction at a halt. But if we have a real mild winter, then hopefully by early spring I'll be in there. And if not, if we have a harsh winter, then by early summer I should be in the new location and able to build a lot more bikes and create a lot more cool media. I've been wanting to work on a lot of the stuff that we covered on here today. You know, I've been wanting to kind of package some of that stuff into YouTube videos and stuff like that for people to reference, so that they don't have to try and you know, ask
memorize.
me 101 questions to find out all the answers that they want. So hopefully once the new shop's done, like I say, lots of new builds and also lots of more informational, instructional media that will help people pick up stunt riding, whether they just want to do it for fun or whether they want to try to make a career out of it as I have.
Well, that's awesome. So perfect. So now we have you promising in the future YouTube videos and a new shop coming soon, right?
Yep, you bet. And a lot more action.
And a lot more action. We're going to hold you to it. Rob, thank you so much.
All right.
Until next time, we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on here. And everybody out there, ride safe and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you, man. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ride Boundless podcast. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. More importantly, share. If you know anybody that's in the motorcycle or car industry or is a fanatic or whatever the case is, let them know about this podcast. Sharing is caring. If you've already subscribed, thank you. If you haven't, make sure to do it. Until next week, ride safe, ride hard, ride boundless.